In 1938, Hitler decided to annex Austria into Germany. He called it the Anschluss. This was the first step in his grand expansionist dream. As German troops marched in, some Austrians cheered and waved flags. Yet many eyes were filled with worry. Knowing a new era had begun, Hitler didn't stop there. He turned to Czechoslovakia, demanding the Sudetenland, home to many ethnic Germans. Britain and France, fearful of war, simply watched. They hoped that by giving up a bit of land, Hitler would be satisfied and stop. But the Sudetenland quickly fell into German hands. Hitler, like a starving man, devoured this rich prize. Everything was made official through the Munich Agreement. The great powers signed papers, believing they had secured peace. Britain's Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, returned in triumph. He waved the paper and declared, "We had peace for our time." But behind his back, Hitler smirked. To him, peace was just a trick to buy more time. Soon after, all of Czechoslovakia was swallowed. Hitler's promises shattered like glass. The Czechs stood stunned, unable to resist. Their nation vanished in the blink of an eye. Only then did Britain and France understand. Their policy of appeasement had brought nothing but disappointment. But Hitler didn't stop. His eyes now turned east to his next target, Poland. Poland trembled, knowing it was in Hitler's sights. A great storm was about to fall upon them. Britain and France whispered, "Should we stop him?" But they still lacked the resolve. Meanwhile, Hitler had already finished his invasion plans. Germany's war machine was ready to roar. In the summer of 1939, the world was shocked as Germany and the USSR shook hands. Two supposed enemies suddenly became friends, at least for now. They signed what became known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Secretly, it divided Poland like a pizza on the table. Stalin smiled for the handshake but kept a knife behind his back. He never truly trusted Hitler. Hitler, meanwhile, only pretended to be friendly. In his mind, betrayal was already in the works. The paper itself was thin, but the consequences were heavy. It paved the way for a bloody invasion. Under the pact, Germany would strike from the west, and the USSR from the east. Poland was trapped like prey between two predators. Poland was isolated. With no way out, an entire nation stood on the edge of the abyss. The world was stunned. No one imagined two opposing powers would plot together like this. Meanwhile, Germany didn't hesitate. Hitler's army sharpened its swords, preparing to strike. The year 1939 was ticking closer, and war's clock had struck. Europe was about to plunge into a nightmare. On September 1, 1939, German tanks thundered across the Polish border. The roar of metal tracks signaled the start of a new war. In the skies, bombers swooped down, dropping explosives like rain. Cities shook and vanished under clouds of fire and smoke. Polish cavalry charged bravely, swords drawn against tanks, a tragic yet hopeless scene of courage. The tanks rolled forward, leaving fallen horsemen behind. Courage alone could not stop armored steel. Within days, Poland was crushed. German forces advanced like an unstoppable storm. Before Poland could recover, the USSR invaded from the east. Red Army troops poured across the border like a crimson wave. The nation was torn in two. The massive pincers crushed a small people. Civilians fled in panic. Cries echoing through the streets, the whole nation sank into tragedy. On the map, Poland faded and disappeared. A country became a blank space. In September 1939, World War II officially ignited. All of Europe was dragged into its spiral. News reached London and Paris over the radio. People were horrified and furious. In Poland, soldiers fought to the last moment. The national flag still flew amid the bombs. Refugees lined the roads, carrying families on their backs. Their lives shattered in just days. Meanwhile, Hitler and Stalin raised glasses in toast. Their sinister handshake had worked. Poland, once proud, now stood only as a gray stone on the map. War had erased a nation. But the story didn't end there. Britain and France now faced the greatest decision of their time. They looked toward Berlin with fury. Silence was no longer an option. Rifles were loaded, fists clenched. A declaration of war was approaching. There was no turning back. Europe was about to enter an age of fire and blood. World War II had truly begun, and this was only the beginning. On September 3, 1939, Britain officially declared war on Germany. For the first time since World War I, the drums of war beat again in Europe. Just hours later, France joined in. Both nations knew that if Hitler wasn't stopped now, no one would be able to stop him. News spread swiftly over the radio. From London to Paris, people first fell silent, then erupted in anxious chatter. Meanwhile in Berlin, Hitler only smirked. To him, this was just the opening move in a much bigger game. Europe officially split into two sides, the Axis and the Allies. The war map was now painted into opposing colors. People in Britain and France took to the streets, believing victory would come swiftly. They thought Germany would soon be defeated. But reality was very different. They didn't know the long nightmare was only just beginning. British soldiers boarded ships to France, full of early enthusiasm. Most thought they'd be back soon, after an easy victory. Meanwhile, French generals boasted about the Maginot Line. They believed those concrete walls would stop Germany cold. But contrary to expectations, no great battle came, and eerie silence hung over the front. Britain and France had declared war on Germany. Yet surprisingly, no big battles broke out. The front remained strangely quiet. In the trenches, French soldiers just yawned. War felt more like an extended vacation. British troops calmly brewed tea, sipping as if still in London. The atmosphere was far from what war was supposed to be. Some even played football out in the open fields. The match replaced the battle. Time drifted on. Month after month passed, without a single shot fired. On the other side, German soldiers weren't rushing either. They relaxed, raising mugs of beer instead of rifles. This period was called the Phoney War, a war that didn't feel like war at all. Some French officers even planted flowers in their trenches, truly bizarre. Day after day, soldiers polished their boots, killing time with small chores. Some napped beneath a do not disturb sign. The battlefield had turned into a giant dormitory. Meanwhile, generals sat around a table, playing board games instead of launching campaigns. In Paris, life went on. People shopped and strolled as if war didn't exist. Some even asked, "War, where?" Reality felt like a joke. Europe seemed frozen in place. The map stood still, waiting for a storm yet to come. But that silence would not last long. The storm of Blitzkrieg was about to erupt. France believed the Maginot Line was impenetrable. Generals proudly claimed nothing could break through its concrete walls. But Germany wasn't foolish enough to attack head-on. Instead, they chose to go around. German tanks thundered through the Ardennes, a forest the French thought impassable. That surprise became their deadliest weapon. Maps at headquarters were flipped upside down. French generals were bewildered, unable to grasp what was happening. German dive bombers rained destruction on defending troops. Chaos spread like a marketplace gone mad. Belgium was quickly swept into the storm. Their collapse opened the door straight into France. Germany called this strategy Blitzkrieg Lightning War, a sudden strike that left the enemy paralyzed. French troops were desperate, like holding baguettes against tanks. Their spirit collapsed as fast as their defenses. British forces stationed in France were also squeezed. They realized the situation was far worse than expected. Soon, the Allies were pushed back to the coast. There was nowhere left to retreat. At Dunkirk, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were trapped in despair. The beaches were packed with men. Little boats from everywhere set out to sea. Fishermen, merchants, anyone with a boat joined the rescue. One by one, soldiers climbed aboard. The miraculous evacuation saved most of the British army. It was called the Miracle of Dunkirk, a military defeat, yet a great spiritual victory. Meanwhile, German troops marched into Paris. The glamorous city now lay empty and silent. On the Eiffel Tower, the Nazi flag waved in the wind, a bitter symbol for all of France. The French government had no choice but to surrender. That decision shocked the entire world. Hitler celebrated at the Arc de Triomphe. To him, this was the sweetest victory. The French people wept in despair. An entire nation had fallen into darkness. On the map, France changed color, almost entirely under German control. Part of the country became Vichy France, a puppet regime controlled by Germany. But not everyone surrendered. From London, General de Gaulle urged his people to keep fighting. In the shadows, the French resistance quietly rose. Secret fighters began their mission. In London, Winston Churchill declared, "We shall never surrender." On one side stood arrogant Hitler, on the other defiant Churchill. A new clash was set in stone. In just a few weeks, nearly all of Europe lay under Germany's boots. The map turned red, signaling a dark new era. But in London, Churchill stood firm. He declared that Britain would fight to the end, no matter how strong the enemy. Germany began preparing for the next plan, striking Britain from the skies. Squadrons of planes were ready to cross the Channel. Over London, searchlights swept the night sky. Civilians looked up anxiously, awaiting a storm of bombs. World War II was about to turn a new page. The Battle of Britain. Stay tuned for the next chapter.